How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the first video in my new series where I teach you everything you need to know about farming blood gems in Bloodborne. This video is going to specifically cover tempering gems. I'm going to explain everything from what a tempering gem is to where you can find the best tempering gems in the game. I'll add in timestamps for everything, so if you just want to skip ahead to the glyphs to farm them, you can skip right ahead. Before we get started, it's important to understand that when we talk about farming top tier gems in Bloodborne, we're always going to be doing so in the Chalice dungeons. FRC Chalice dungeons to be specific. You do need to have PlayStation Plus to search for Chalice dungeon glyphs, which is necessary for this guide to be of any help to you. If you don't know what that means, I will leave a link to a spreadsheet that outlines the fastest and easiest way to unlock FRC dungeons. Once you're there, you're ready to start farming gems. I'll add in a few options for players that do not have PlayStation Plus, but the gems won't be nearly as good as the ones you'll find in the dungeons, unfortunately. So without further ado, let's start off with the basics. What is a tempering gem? Well, when you see the term tempering in a gem name, that means that the gem adds a percentage of physical attack up onto your weapon's attack power. This is not to be confused with odd tempering gems, which add a flat amount of damage instead of a percentage, but we'll cover those in another video. Tempering gems are going to be the bread and butter for most physical type builds. They're the easiest top tier farmable gems to obtain, and they can make most weapons in Bloodborne extremely powerful. You mainly will find tempering gems in the shape of radials, triangles, and waning gems. It is also important to quickly go over what dungeons have what gems. In Thumaru dungeons, you'll find radial gems. In Iz dungeons, you'll find triangle gems. And in Loran dungeons, you'll find waning gems. There also exists a fourth dungeon type called Hintertomb, but they don't offer anything much in the way of top tier gems, so we'll just set them to the side for now. This is a very important fundamental concept to understand, as gem farming can get quite complicated for newcomers. So let's go over the ideal builds and weapons you'll want to farm tempering gems for. Since tempering gems increase physical attack power, builds that use strength, skill, and even blood tinge will benefit from them. There are a few things to keep in mind though, mainly in the form of what weapons you want to use on your build. Let's take the boom hammer for example. The regular boom hammer has 2 radial slots and 1 waning slot. Sounds good, right? You sure could make this boom hammer do great damage with 2 radials and a waning gem in there, but what if I told you there's a better way? Thus the uncanny boom hammer comes into play. This version of the boom hammer also has 2 radial slots, but where it differs is that instead of a waning slot, it's got a triangle slot. By the way, I'll add glyphs in the description to the uncanny and lost versions of every weapon so you can start with what you need. Okay, Vermi, well what does that matter? Well, the difference lies in the potential of the 2 different gems. To get the absolute best tempering gems, the 27.2% versions, you'll need to farm the Merciless Watchers in Layer 1 of various Thumaru and Iz dungeons. The triangle gem is able to be farmed easily for a 27.2% version, as is the radial. But the Merciless Watchers don't exist as a boss in Loran dungeons where they drop waning gems. So how are you supposed to find a 27.2% tempering waning gem? Well, therein lies the issue. The highest normally obtained tempering waning gem is 21% version from a mob enemy. While that's a decent bump in attack power, it's still a ways off from 27.2%. Now, it is actually possible to get a 27.2% waning gem, but it's an out-of-shape gem, and I'll cover out-of-shape gems in another video. But the problem at hand right now is that you want to have 3 27.2% gems, which is why it's extremely important in this case to choose the right version of the weapon you want to use. For tempering setups, it's always best to use the version of the weapon that has 2 radials and 1 triangle. That way you can have 3 27.2% gems. However, not every weapon is the same as this, so double check the weapon before you upgrade it all the way. Now you might ask, what exactly am I looking for in a gem? Well, we know that the ultimate goal is a 27.2% physical attack up gem. But you may have noticed a second effect on your gem. Those are curses. They vary from unintrusive to unusable. And there are 6 total curses that can be on a gem. Starting with the stamina curse. This is the most widely accepted, most usable curse. When you hear people say perfect gem, they usually mean a gem with the highest attack possible with a stamina curse. Like this one, for example. The extra stamina it takes away is basically unnoticeable, and this is what most prospectors are after in a gem. The next most usable curse is attack versus kin down. Since there are only 4 different kin enemies in the entire game, gems with this curse will still be great to use. Next up would be weapon durability down. This curse can be usable or extremely annoying depending on the weapon you're using. If you're using it on something like the Bloodletter, which has high durability, it won't be nearly as noticeable. But using it on something like the Shikage would be borderline unusable, as the weapon would break very often. After that, we have attack versus beast down. For PvE, this is all but useless, as 99% of the game's enemies are beasts. You can use these gems for specific weapons you plan to kill kin enemies with, but overall, it's best to farm for a gem with another curse on it. And now we get to the 2 worst curses of all. The first of these being HP deplete. This curse will slowly drain your HP at all times and is generally annoying to try and manage along with everything else. You can try to use pulsing gems to counteract this, but the effort spent in doing that could be spent in farming a better gem in the first place. And the last curse is attack down, which does exactly as it says. This is the absolute worst curse of all and should never be used under any circumstance. Now onto the actual farming. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, tempering gems are extremely easy to farm compared to some other types of gems. When you're farming bosses, item discovery runes won't help you in farming gems from the boss, but it will help if you're also farming upgrade materials at the same time. So the farming methods are actually very basic and beginner friendly. For tempering radial gems, there are several glyphs available to you that are equally as good for farming. The glyph I'm going to share with you has an edited gem pool for better drop rates, and this is the one I always use. I picked this one just because of the boss arena. It's one of the bigger ones and makes the fight much easier than fighting these 3 in a cramped room. And speaking of these 3, you'll be seeing them a lot if you want to farm up the best gems out there. They can be found in Thumaru and Iz dungeons as a layer 1 boss, and you'll get really good at killing them. Now they won't always drop a good gem, but with a little persistence you'll eventually find that 27.2% gem, and it'll feel so good when you slot it into your weapon. Let's move on to the tempering triangle gems now. Much like the glyph for the radials, this dungeon too has an edited gem pool, so getting those sweet 27.2% gems will be easier for you. The glyph I use for triangles is this one here. It too has the Merciless Watchers as the layer 1 boss, so you should be really good at killing these guys at this point. Just keep at it, and you'll eventually snag yourself a really nice triangle gem from them. And lastly, let's cover the waning gems. Like I mentioned earlier, these only go up to 21% physical attack up, but they're very easily farmed from a regular mob enemy. In this case, this glyph is likely to be the easiest time you'll have farming out of all 3 of these. Now, unlike when you're farming bosses for gems, item discovery runes will absolutely help you in farming enemy mobs. Stack as much as you can to have the absolute best chance of the mob dropping gems as opposed to ritual materials, blood vials, or bullets. It is also advisable to buy as many bold hunter's marks as possible for this farm. You'll be using a lot of them. The easiest way I've found for this farm is once you spawn in from the first lamp, you'll go outside and to the left, and in this room there's going to be 2 labyrinth madmen. Walk slowly up behind the first one and backstab him. Then once you're done with that one, the next one is up top here, and you can get his attention by shooting or throwing something at him. He'll jump down, and then you can just do what you can to take him out. Then use your bold hunter's mark and rinse and repeat until you find a gem you're happy with. Now, as for the best gems that are obtainable without PlayStation Plus, you really only have one option, and that's farming Winter Lanterns for droplet gems. You can farm the ones in the Nightmare of Mensis or the Hunter's Nightmare, and droplet gems are special in the fact that they can be used in any gem slot no matter what the shape is. And some of these can actually be pretty powerful, so they can be great placeholder gems as well. And I suppose that wraps up the Tempering Blood Gem Farming Guide. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments, and if you're new here, I regularly put out Chalice Dungeon videos showing off rare enemies, roaming bosses, and more. Stop by sometime and say hi. Happy farming, and I'll catch you all in the next one.